unleash the power of your data. All right, so welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. We are going to start with our next panel discussion. Do we all feel refreshed? Do we have the energy now? Yes? We can be very attentive now for the next one? Yes, awesome. All right, so our next discussion that we have is on building modern business with an effective data strategy. And for that, I'll call upon our eminent panelists today. First, we have Mr. Vijoy Basu, Senior Director, Global Head, IT, AI, and Analytics for Cognizant. Can we have you on stage, sir? All right. Next, we have Mr. Ashutosh Dixit, Director, Consulting, CIO Advisory for LTIMindtree. A round of applause, ladies and gentlemen. Next up, we have Mr. Nikhil Paul, Chief Technology and Information Officer, 6D Technologies. All right, next up, we have Mr. Kumar Alagappan, Senior Director, Data Science and Customer Analytics for Hewlett Packard Enterprise. And finally, we have Mr. Ram S., CEO and Managing Director for iBus Networks. And to moderate this discussion, may I call upon Mr. Hitesh Sethi, Senior Director, Head of Analytics and Business Advisory for Dun & Bradstreet India. Over to you.
Thank you, Kaustubh. So we have an interesting topic today. I think we'll talk about modern businesses. How do we build modern businesses keeping data at the heart of it? Around that, when we speak about data, the challenges which are there, so many of them, and largely around that, we'll talk about the model, whether it's the service model or whether it's about the size of the company. Lot of data around us. I think there's abundance of data. When you look at it, and this was an interesting stat, I was reading. So right from the first Uruk, that tablet was found, around, and there were two contesting timelines, 3,500 years, 5,000 years ago, till as recently as 2010, the amount of data, numbers which are generated, we are doing that every day now. So that's the amount of data which is available, but at the same time, when you look at any organization, and when we talk about structured data, right, this data which is readily available, I pull a file from MCA, it's available in a standard format. Less than 50% of the organization is using any kind of structured data. If we look at unstructured data, which is, we talk about sentiment analysis, we talk about likes, we talk about less than 1% of the organization, and when you look at the 50% which is actually using structured data, there's this classic problem of, are you the right person to have this data? Can you act upon it? Do you have the authority? Do you understand it, right? And these are the challenges which come up when we look at data. So, interesting panel we have, and let's just get into it. From a structure perspective, what we'll try to do is cover the conversation, keep 10 minutes for question answers, if any of you have any questions. Largely, we start with the challenges. That's the best thing to do. When it comes to, and let me start with Ashutosh, when we look at the different phases that the data, and the journey which it passes through, right from how I store it, how do I integrate it, to processes where I'm actually building functional use cases, Now, in that, when you look at the challenges which come, top of the mind, it could be how do I match data, how do I integrate data, how do I find the relevant data for a marketing use case or a finance use case, what are the top challenges which comes to your mind, and suggestions, guidance on how best to address them.
Thanks for this question. So It's pretty a wild question because when we talk about data life cycle, it starts with data ingestion. And that itself is very complex because we are now receiving data from every conceivable resources. And what happens that data comes in variety of format. Most of the systems understand. Other, we might need to translate or we might need to modify a bit. In the process, since this setup is on data privacy and security, what happens, sometimes we do not know whether we have right user consent to collect that data. And that itself is a first challenge. We need to erase certain data that is, maybe it's meant for us, but we are not supposed to collect based on regulation. And going past that stage, we need to think about data velocity. Because depends on how we are monitoring the data. For example, done in Bradstreet, we are monitoring all sort of hashtags in Twitter and LinkedIn and Instagram. And we know that in a day, maybe 10,000 hashtags we are expecting. And all of a sudden, some event happens and there are about 1 million hashtags. Our systems are not designed for 1 million hashtags. So the velocity of data requires scalability. Do we have system in place that can address our ad hoc demand? And then afterwards, we need to think about data quality, that all that data which is coming, are we all supposed to process it? Or we need to skip certain chunks of the data and let's process only data that can be meaningful. Once we are gone past that stage, biggest problem is data governance, master data management. How do you give it to somebody who needs it, and how do you avoid giving it to somebody who doesn't need? So that's a everlasting challenge. There are quite a few methods. Those have evolved over a period of time. We have data fabric in place, and then we have ETL architecture, and then we have a set of other instructions in place that can monitor all those things and can avoid certain anomalies. But again, since the integration is very vast, end users are, it can be anyone, it can be marketing, it can be finance, it can be some other team. There are still challenges those companies are facing. So that's my opening statement.
Sure, yeah, no, thank you. Interesting points you made there. I think the planning part is very critical. When we say that, okay, do you have the right to have this data? If you have the right to have this data, how do I make use of this? I think that's the second. It may be a huge amount of data. Do I have enough processing power? Do I have the right governance in place? You made an interesting point on master data management. I think everybody is finding that single source of truth, right? And sometimes I feel that that single source of truth is not enough, because when I'm actually building the use cases, then I want multiple versions of the truth, because what is relevant for a marketing use case, for a risk use case, may emanate from that single source, which is master data management. But the driving part is very different. So privacy in design, like you very rightly said, the fabric, so largely I'm a large organization, complex structures, and maybe I'll come to Ram and Kumar, I have this problem of abundance, right? I have challenges in data integration. How do I store it? Data privacy, data governance. But what about the small enterprise, right? We say, big data, we talk about so many tools and technologies, but I'm a small company, I'm not a digital native, I'm not a startup, I'm a small business. What is your advice for them to start using or working on this data journey?
Yeah, thanks for that. See, I come from a smaller business enterprise, but of course, we would like to believe that we are digitally native, even though we are small. We're also one of those. See, we work in an ecosystem where we process large amount of data or facilitate. We are a networking company, which means we are perhaps one of the largest indoor networking. I mean, in this hotel, our network runs to where you access Wi-Fi or the mobile signals. So by definition, we facilitate data. But at the same time, as you rightly said, data, this network business is a regulated business. So we get license. So which means privacy is very important. So we have regulated by the government, whatever is we facilitate, make sure that they are legally protected and compliant to all privacy laws. So therefore, I mean, I need to keep the data safe so that whenever the lawful interception, God forbid somebody, the authorities come and ask for data, we should provide it. So our challenge is to how to keep enormous amount of data. In fact, I was just checking today, we have close to about 150 million footfalls like this, across our network. That's a very large amount of volume of data that come and go. And each of them we need to data stamp it, qualify it for quick retrieval. So my problem starts with accessing the data and storing it for quick retrieval. That is the first one. The second thing is our business also, we provide connectivity, as in provide the network, and then connectivity and commerce. The left-hand side of my equation is commerce. So what do I do with the data? That's where we partner with people like Dun & Bradstreet so that how do we monetize that amount of data, which has got a lot of, because we are spread across entire India. So therefore, that is the other thing. How do we annotate the data? How do you operate on the data? So that people like yourselves, or many other partners who can harness the power of data to build use cases on it. So those broadly two challenges. And
Sure.
being small, even though we are small, but data is big, same thing. I also have the big data problem. So my challenge is to how do we optimize the investments I make in technology? Because for me, there's competition for capital. Whether I'll put the capital to grow my business, my alpha, grow my revenues, etc., or I do a secondary, which actually enabling business where I invest in technology that will give. This is a trade-off I continuously make. Those are broadly the challenges.
Sure. No, interesting points. So data privacy, data governance, to begin with, focus on that, build a strong foundation, partner for monetization,
Yes.
the data you're building. At the same time, when it comes to capital allocation, have a clear mechanism which guides the capital allocation because the resources are scarce.
Absolutely.
Kumar?
Yeah, so I think if you're a small and medium business, I think if resources is a challenge, right? Like you don't have endless capital, or no one has endless capital, but you don't have resources in terms of manpower, the skill sets, and so on and so forth. So the good thing about the day and age that we live in today is one is an as-a-service economy, right? Like you can try and buy, right? So you don't have to make decisions that, like an investment decision that sort of burns a hole for perpetuity, right? So that's like the boon of the age that we live in. That's like number one. Number two is when you're tackling the challenge that you want to tackle, right? You need to pick what is closer to your business strategy, right? If your business strategy today, if your CEO of your mid-market enterprise feels that he wants to make sure that customer churn is not a problem, then focus on data sets that are related to customer churn, work upwards, like, backpedal back to the goal that you have in mind, and then focus on how do you kind of have the right business processes that can help you produce data which you can analyze to answer the goal of, how do I minimize customer churn, right? And if that is a marketing data set, if that is a sales data set, right, then how do you get people across different functions to come together and tackle the problem which is associated to a strategy issue, right?
Sure.
And only if it is done at that level, because obviously you can go at problems that are very large in scope, but then you will run into resourcing issues
Right.
at a point. So it has to be incremental wins, and you need to use the try and buy economy that you are in, right? Like, so you do the project, you get it done. Is it something that's giving you an alpha, to Ram's point, right? Then you sustain it and you keep the investments going. But if it's something that's actually you thought of something, but it's not, giving out the results that you want, then you should be in a flexible place to shut it down.
Sure. Yeah, no, interesting points. So to begin with, in the current environment, there are options which make your cost variable. You don't need to necessarily make the capex. Find a simpler area, right? It's a business problem, and have the ability to pivot, right? Maintain that flexibility. I think good points to begin. So there, let me actually jump. I'll come to you, Vijoy. We were talking about emerging service models, which can be leveraged to build modern businesses. In that same lens, I've jumped 2-3 tracks, but then because it's relevant and more pertinent for mid-market businesses, would you want to talk about the different service models?
Yeah, see, there are I mean, from a cloud computing standpoint, today we have function as a service, backend as a service, AI as a service. What is important to understand is for a startup or a small, medium-sized company that wants to be a modern business is how they leverage technology for their benefit, right? Primarily faster go-to-market, better personalized experience for the customer, differentiate themselves from competitors. So they would use any kind of services because they can't build, if I take AI as a service, they can't have a large data science team for small companies, right? It will be a huge investment in terms of resources, infrastructure, scaling them up. So for them to be able to use AI as a service is a great way for them to speed up. Let me take an example, right? So there's a large company in the US, a bank, which basically moved all their data centers, closed all their data centers, moved onto the cloud, right? And so any resources that were sitting and doing infrastructure management is now focused on customer-centric innovations. So they have got rid of their infrastructure as a service by moving to cloud. There's a large coffee chain that is very famous. They have also used AI as a service. So pre-built custom models of AI rather than building it in-house, using it from the hyperscalers that are out there. They built something called Deep Brew. So it's a recommendation engine. If you go to that particular coffee shop, you have an ordering, or if you're ordering on the app, it will give you recommendations of what to choose as the brew or the tea or the coffee that you want to drink, depending on the day, depending on the weather, your location. So if it's a Monday, obviously Monday morning people want a strong coffee, so it's going to do some kind of a recommendation. So rather than trying to build it in-house, they're using those kind of solutions. That's an example. I'm not sure how many of you used Duolingo. It's a language learning app. So there they're using GPT-4. Gen AI is the flavor of the season. They're using GPT-4. You can converse. Earlier, if I were to learn a Spanish language, I would have to converse in it, and a human tutor would have to come back and tell me whether I spoke right or what are the mistakes. Now they're using GPT-4, and it tells me on the fly whether I'm good or bad about it. So for a small startup to be able to move with speed, to scale up very fast, it is essential that they use these new models that are evolving out, and they don't have to manage their own large set of teams. Scalability is fast, efficiencies are huge, helps them to go and touch the customer quicker. One personal example I'll talk, although it's not in this, as a small and medium. This particular hotel, when COVID happened, the restaurants here were not running, right? So they started a service which I had ordered for, and the food comes to your home prepared by the chefs here, right? It's part of Cumin. So it's on the Tata New app. You can go and order it. So food ordering from a 5-star hotel, right from this Taj MG hotel, I was able to order. So it's a food order as a service. Obviously in the back end there's a mobile app. I'm sure they're going to personalize. They have my entire history of my stay here, my food preferences, and I'm going to see a lot of AI being used beyond it from an existing model. So those are some examples that I can share.
Yeah, no, thank you. I think, the message is that look wide. There are a lot of options for small size, mid-size businesses available. It also minimizes your investment, resource allocation, and most importantly, it provides you the scalability. I think, and all you need is your ability to process what is available. And that's the investment you need to make in yourself and in the team. Now, we spoke about one aspect of data, use cases, challenges. Let me come to you, Nikhil, and then maybe even Vijoy, you can come in here. So the other dimension is the moment I'm a small business or a large business even, and I'm handling such large amount of data. We talk about Gen AI, foundation models, and all of these comes with that threat of data security. How real is that? And if it is real, then what can we do as businesses to address that?
So let me give what we do. So we are primarily focusing on the telecommunication space. So you can see on telecommunication, there has been a lot of buzz, which you can see like 5G coming in, 4G is moving to LTE, then we have IoT, M2M businesses coming, connected vehicles coming in. So all these have evolved from where we were all using that traditional Nokia phones to digital phones. And most of the telecos which we work with, they are all focusing on moving everything on digital strategy. So when we focus from this perspective, there is a lot of data being generated. So one of the areas, at least when we work on, the major focus from the customers, what we see, whether it is a tier 1 customer, tier 2, tier 3, across the globe, whether you talk about Americas or Europe or APAC region, all of them see this data as a challenge, but it's also an opportunity for all of us like us. And we also believe that this opportunity can give better customer experience. So that's how we look at this data being growing. And the focus of all these telcos, or including us, it's not just B2C business anymore. It's also B2B, where we talk about enterprises also coming in. The focus has been to check this data and utilize this data to monetize, not just for internally. So internal consumption means you reduce the TCOs, you see where you invest. So the point which was coming up on the CapEx, all these are the areas where I've seen significant improvement. And also on the areas where it is focused externally with customer experience. Now, when we have to do all these things, you need to be very careful on the data which you manage, because it's not that you just blindly, you have the data, you cannot just consume it as you need. So that's where the consent mechanism, the data security mechanisms come into play. So fortunately, at least from the telecom side, I could say there are some standards which has been built in. And it's not just telecom GSMA standards, I would say, but also with respect to the GDPR regulations which are required, the data governance which are required, the securities which are required, which are globally agreed. So these are some of the best practices, what we do. And there is also a trend of moving everything onto the cloud. So we also focus on the cloud strategy, the cloud security. And also, instead of we building everything from that, we reuse the capabilities from hyperscalers. Like you have better governance being built when we talk about Gen AI or conversational AI. There are capabilities where hyperscalers provide it. Like you can see about Bedrock on Amazon. There are multiple capabilities. So I would suggest any small or medium companies, you should focus your strategy as how your business is looking into, and choose the right technology stack. And that will come with automatically the data governance being set. So you need to start with hygiene, basic principles being set. And if you are looking at a cloud strategy or even on an on-prem strategy, focus from these areas. Don't try to build everything from the scratch where you need to run through all these governance and securities.
Sure. So I think what you said was governance and privacy at the heart of it. Whenever you're building it, build up foundationally.
Yeah.
But at the same time, the other part is that when I'm bringing in so much data, how do I ensure which is relevant and which is not, right? That's the other part of keeping too much data with me, and anything else which comes to your mind when it comes to handling data security.
No, it's a great question, right? See, the data engineering teams love to bring data because they are like, I bought 10 petabytes of data. The question is how much of that data is relevant for the right use case or the business problem that we are solving. So, like Nikhil also said, right? The approach should always be what's the business problem you're solving for? Bring that relevant data into your lake or warehouse or wherever you want to dump it in, right? Any other data is not needed, should not be brought. You have to have data security. It is, see, in the battle between, we want to go fast versus having the right set of controls, sometimes innovation takes over and then people try to do things without the right data controls, data access being set aside, right? So it is important from the time, the first pillar is data, how it is collected, how it is stored, how it is mined, how it is processed. You have the right data governance. Second is the AI model, right? The one that you build, is it fair enough? Is it ethical enough? Are the right set of AI controls? Finally, the app that exposes that to this one, that is also subject to a lot of risks and threat attacks, right? So you should be able to protect those. Data privacy, Nikhil also alluded to it. It's different countries have different data privacy regulations. It's so difficult to manage and track all of them. But you need to be sure you're compliant, you're running your audits, you're ensuring that you're running threat simulation so that you do not have those kind of. The two things that I believe is very critical to safeguard anything in an organization from a data security is, one, you must train your employees. You must explain to them the importance of data security. Physical security, when we came here, the guy scans us, right? We don't take it very seriously. We consider it as a hindrance. So organizations need to educate. There's a reason why we are doing that. So data security is critical. And here are the practices that we follow, which you need to follow, because all the developers are building those apps. Second thing is, organizations need to communicate to the customers, saying, hey, we have built this data security principles, we have the anonymization, we have the encryption, so that you get the trust from the customer that this is a safe, secure app to use, because they are also confused. You know, if I expose my data here, or if I put my data here, or if I use this app, what will happen to, you know, the data that we are giving to customers like us. So those are the two things that I would finally say is very critical to build trust around data security.
Yeah, no, I think that communication point is very strong and relevant. We don't communicate enough. Do our employees understand why this is relevant? How can it impact us? Do our customers know that we have a process? And I think choose the right partners. I think as a country, what we end up doing is, sometimes look at the cheapest data which is available, and maybe that will have liability now, once the law comes into and the rules come in. But having said that, the other markets do have that, right? So choose the right partners, choose the right tech stack, and communicate. I think that's the least you can do. Understand why the processes are there, what implications they may have. Now, let's look at a different complexity. I'm a large entity, and this, I'll come to you, Ashutosh and Nikhil, So look at the journey. I have a data warehouse, then a data lake, then I'm looking at integration, then I'm looking at compute and then reporting, right? That's broadly at a very high level. And so many tech stacks, right? So much intermingling. And now, the cloud gives me the ability with various service models, which we spoke about, and when you look at all of this, what is the best way to optimize, right? Sometimes for a large enterprise it gets so confusing. We were just talking actually a while back, in the afternoon, and one of the conversation was about a logistic player, who's trying to get out of mainframe now, and they're worried what will happen to their processes, right? It's a large scale change which is happening, so things like that. In the data context, how do you address those?
If you ask among tech guys, which is the biggest company, and we will call it a Google or Alphabet, what actually do they do? Google is not a product company, it's a data company. And by the virtue of it, what do they actually do? They sell data. So data is their asset. They think themselves as a data company, and this is exactly the mindset large companies need to adopt. They need to think themselves as a data company. Once you start thinking yourself as a data company, you will start working towards data governance and master data management. So one of the model that I really liked, and when I studied about it, it is not fully matured, but it's adequate enough to implement it now, is data as a service. So you talked about we have databases, and then those are relational and non-relational. Then we have some file systems. We have files. Then we have log files. We have sentimental analysis. That's again another data. And then we have images. We have videos. Now this exactly is our data. And if everything we want to control about this data, the controls should be next to this data. The problem right now is that the controls are outside. Let it be identity and access management to this data. They're sitting outside this data. Then the data governance is also outside. There is a different software that takes care of that, and it provides a facilitation. Then the integration also goes outside. At any point of time, if I have created a file, I wouldn't know who is accessing that file, when it has been accessed last. Then the governance. So likewise, there are a lot of pieces to this data. Now what data as a service does, it encapsulates this entire concept and then brings everything under one umbrella called data fabric. So anything to do with the data will go under data fabric. Absolutely no data would stay outside this data fabric. Now if any application wants to access this data, it has to make a call through this data fabric, not to the data directly. So what would happen in that case? This application knows where the data is going, so it provides end-to-end traceability. It would know which person, which system has accessed data at what time. And that's when you start gaining control over this data.
Sure.
So we need to think ourselves as a data company, and then you'll start jumbling the pieces together and you'll make some architecture out of it.
Sure. Yeah, think deeply about data products, and that's how it will get you over. Anything from?
So maybe I break that into two parts. Like, let me take an example of a tier one who has like 90 million customers, and they were all running on a legacy platform. And their prime objective was to make everything digital and give a digital experience to the customer. So one of the challenges what we had when we had to do this journey, many of the data points were not getting captured so that you cannot improve the experience. So that was one of the basic fundamentals which we need to correct. So then we started correcting the basic fundamentals of capturing all the data points. Then instead of maybe 1,000 parameters what you check today, it get into a large data model, right? So the data starts growing. So when we did this transformation journey, one of the fundamental part which we did is to set up a governance team along with the opcos, identify their business strategy, because their strategy was to become like an IT strategy house which will enable the services to enterprises or B2C customers. So I feel that strategy has to be set in from a data governance perspective. Then the next step what we had is to evolve into the technology solutions. Whether you want to have a long-term cloud strategy or you want to go with an on-prem strategy. So all these fundamental blocks are addressed. Then we also see the regulatory requirements. Then strong governance, strong technology tag, and also getting the user consent on the data what you capture. That is also very important. So these are some of the areas what we really focused on the transformation journey.
Sure.
Now when it came to the small scale transformation, which was like a green field, they were trying to launch a 5G service. So in that scenario, you start fresh. So wherever you have a fresh journey started, I would say the journey is much easier. Again, I go to the basic fundamentals of setting up the right fundamentals of the entire foundation block, and then it slowly comes into play. Again, coming from the technology stack, there are multiple ways you do that. Like you set the governance with the technology tools, you set the audit tools, you monitor what is happening. So this can be achieved. So I would say legacy transformation on a digital journey is different. How we see the data, how we need to monetize, compared to how we look at a greenfield and a fresh start business.
Right, yeah, and greenfield gives you more flexibility. Let me ask that question to Kumar and Vijoy. Again, same question, large companies, transformation, current stack, obsolescence, and this whole debate about whether I should make this investment, will it generate ROI or not, what lens is the right lens? When we are looking at making those decisions, how do we evaluate those decisions?
So I think for large enterprises, the decisions always start with the balance sheet, right? Like I think it is this going to improve revenue and margin, right? I think that's what the all CFOs ask the question to whichever line of business you belong to, and that justifies the IT investments that you make in a year. And if it comes into your POR, then you have to be in a position to give a financial figure to anything that you're doing. Right, and generally the cost of doing business, right? There are certain things that are non-negotiable, right? Like when you talk about regulatory things and governance-related things, I think that's taken much at a corporate level, where the IT organization, the COO, the legal teams, they kind of take that decision because it is a cost to your brand value, right? And some things are non-negotiable, right? But things that are in your power, which is like, let's say I run the marketing analytics function for my organization, right? So the cost is this something that can help us target our customers better, right? Is it going to be contextually enriching for our customers? Is it going to improve our experience better? You need to have answers in a way that can be, talked in dollars and cents. And if you are not able to provide that, then nothing gets signed off, right? And in terms of legacy versus net new, I kind of agree with what Nikhil was saying, right? Like, so anything that you're getting in as a fresh start, right? Then you have like greenfield opportunities, you could try anything that you want to, right? And you're not burdened with legacy, right? But when you are burdened with legacy, right, then you need to kind of really pick and choose the use cases that you really feel are going to give you the business value, right? You cannot migrate 2 petabytes of information from your on-prem to cloud because it's one, you don't know whether it'll work the way it was supposed to, right? Like the mainframe example that you're talking about, right? Or is it going to be cost prohibitive, right? You don't know the answers when you start with. So starting in small steps with use cases that you can control, showing results and proof points, then gaining your finance team's confidence. I think that's the way you do it.
Sure. No, it makes sense actually. The whole identify use case, rapidly prototype, go to market, get feedback. Right. And most importantly, have the right data to build your business case. I think we're talking of data and that is important. Vijoy, anything?
Yeah, so I agree with what Kumar said. Now see, large organizations typically have some legacy tech stack, right? So transformation is never a greenfield, mostly it is brownfield. And that is very complex and it is very challenging. What is important besides looking at the business ROI, if it's to grow the revenue, market share, improve margins, whatever it may be, that's how you get the project approval. What is important for a CIO is to ensure that they're not running too many transformation projects that causes too much disruption in the organization. They may be right from a certain standpoint, but then if you change too much in a short time frame, the business is not going to be able to run successfully because you also need the business to validate and test them. So you need to prioritize which ones will run when, and when the business is available for you to help you run those transformations, do the end user testing. So that is very critical. Sometimes we miss that out. We are like, we've got the approval, we want to run with it, but we don't have the right set of business folks engaged to run this project. So prioritizing them, getting the buy-in and the people on board to be able to execute the project is critical to success.
Sure. Yeah, thank you. So last question, let me just, start with both of you and then open it up to everyone. We're talking about, and if we keep the Gen AI buzz on the side for the time being, we're talking India business environment, we're talking of real world use cases, right? These are low hanging fruit opportunities. You could look at it from a mid-market lens, you can look at it from a large enterprise lens, things which are obvious, which are working and generally can lead to greater adoption, So it's an open-ended question, just some use cases which you think are strong, keeping the India market lens. And when I'm saying India market lens, you could be an India business serving for global customers also, and it could be functional areas, it could be internal processes, any of these use cases which come to your mind.
So I think the markets that Ram and Nikhil are in, right, like which is edge data is something that, as a company, HP is very bullish on, right, which is for a market like a developing market like India, where there's a lot of data that's being done at the edge through IoT and through sensors and wireless access points and everything, right? So and the point is, how do we kind of monetize the data at the edge? How do we process the data at the edge? How do we transform it into valuable insights that enterprises can start leveraging and buy, right? And use it in contextually in their business workflows. So I think this is something that I think I feel with 5G like really picking up, this is going to be an evolving space that I'm closely looking at.
Sure. Yeah. Thank you. Ram?
Yeah, same thing. See, I would use, especially since you touched upon India market. India market, you have to be really capital efficient. Here you cannot, unlike US, you can't be over-engineer anything. We want to see value. That's where the innovation happens. In India, I would say that way, when you look at the telecom ARPUs, we're the lowest in the world with the highest spectrum per data, per pop. So with that, we still make money, in the sense Airtel revenues are 52% EBITDA. With that kind of competitive ARPU, high spectrum, all of compliant, still we have a superb financials from an EBITDA perspective. Of course, the balance sheet is different, CapEx, monetization. So the point is use data to take out inefficiencies. You never over-engineer anything, that luxury India cannot. You will be sort of punished in the market, or you will be out of business very soon. Sure. So here you have got to use data as a means to optimize, take out efficiencies, which means that which leads to the only way you can do is innovation. Right. So you have a larger turn for a capital. You take one more turn for the capex you do, so that you become super efficient. And the only part of that is data. You need to know where you're going, You weaponize that information to that level. Because now, because of technology, all of these gentlemen said it is very easy to acquire, a lot of open source.
Correct.
So
Yeah.
you don't have to make huge capital commitment.
Yeah.
You can get the technologies done and then scale it very quickly. In fact,
Yeah.
we ourselves run, I was telling you, 120 million every day users in my network and growing at about 60%
Yeah,
CAGR.
and there's an interesting use case which you have for inland transportation also,
Yeah,
I
absolutely.
think, which so if you look at the country, I think supply chain is another area, right? And using
Yes.
the sensors, devices,
Yes, yes.
the data which you're capturing, because I know what comes in at the ports, but after that I have no
Well,
visibility.
I don't know idea. Exactly the
Yeah,
use case
so-
we are working with.
So I
here.
think, Vijoy, please.
Yeah, I'll quickly touch upon. I think for people staying in Bangalore, your electricity bills have gone up. I'm assuming if you have looked at it in the last couple of months, the energy sector has a huge potential. We are an energy hungry country. And so there is a lot of inefficiencies in the whole data transmission, energy, how it reaches your home from the way it is produced. Using data and analytics there can significantly enhance the efficiencies and also save the cost. I think that's an area that we should potentially look at. The private companies are doing it. If all the companies start to look at it, I think we can save a lot of money, forex reserves also.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I thought all this increase in energy bill is because everybody's using GenAI in Bangalore. Yeah,
So since you asked to keep GenAI apart,
yeah, please.
so I think data velocity over the period of time has made a huge impact, and now we already are embracing that in retail sector. So earlier the data was available, maybe not in the same quantity as today, but we used to take that data for decision making processes maybe after a week or so, because we will do all that big data analysis on batch basis. But now, since real time analysis is available, almost all sectors can take data driven decisions right now. I mean, based on what I'm speaking right now, this live conversation can be recorded, streamed, and captioned, and based on that, the market nearby can get influenced.
Right.
So it's time that we use that velocity in our advantage and see what comes out after that.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think multilingual translation is an important use case. Real-time data is available. Can we actually build that? In defense, it has significant applications. Yeah.
So as the data is growing, right, like we see data monetization has a huge potential. So I am not able, because there are so many use cases, and that's why we see so many startups or unicorns being built in India. So one of the case what we are also seeing with 5G, IoT coming in, a lot of devices, a lot of connectivities are getting enabled till the end point. And we see that can become a huge potential, because this data can be used for generating a lot of new business opportunities. One of the areas, as what he also mentioned, like on the energy sector. Now we are also looking at how do we improve the data which is coming from the energy sector, and also to go on a sustainability route and go green approach.
Right.
So that is also something where all these capabilities were not available before, but we have now the luxury of data coming to us. As I said in the beginning, it's an opportunity again.
Yeah, no, I agree. Data is a big opportunity. Sustainability is an important point. We didn't speak about it, but I think that's front and center, whether it's in India or in the global context. And if you ask me, the most important use case is please start with your finance organization, and that will increase your adoption for any use cases you want to build up. If there are any questions, I can take a couple of questions. My time is up, but in case the audience wants to ask anything, can take a couple of questions. Anyone? Yeah, please.
Sir, in a situation like COVID, there are not many use cases. There is only a lot of voluminous data available, but there are a lot of uncertainties and unknown things. A lot of data is generated, but use cases are not there, or some models are not there. How do you handle such situation? Because if you are dependent on some model that is not available in such cases, so how that data can be used for future in health industry? Because so much of data from so many patients and so much is available. So how we can tackle that kind of data and how you build gaps in that data and fit the gaps. So this could be one of the practical.
Yeah, sir, absolutely. Thank you for that. Healthcare is an area where actually a lot of intervention is happening already. If you read the Tata Group chairman's book, Digital India, which he came up with, he's covered the work which TCS is doing on the healthcare segment and many other businesses are doing. At the rural end, the concept is that, where the doctor is not available, can I use models to enable a technician to do the early diagnosis, right? And that is one use case which is happening, because we overnight cannot build up the skill set availability, but can we actually bring down the process to the level where he can actually understand and early identification of disease, which enables you to balance the loads on the hospital, right? Because the later you bring in, the more burden there is on the healthcare system. So like that, there are many use cases which are happening. But it has to be done at scale. What you're saying is right. We are a country where healthcare is a state subject, multiple models which are there. And I think this is where the tech companies and the government have to work cohesively together.
Yeah, I'll just take a quick shot at it. So during COVID, it's a black swan event, right? It's an event once in a blue moon, so nobody has prepared for it. In Bangalore, there was a group of doctors who worked with technologists, and they created an AI model which basically, if you go outside of Bangalore, it was very difficult to diagnose a COVID patient because COVID tests were not available in rural areas. So they said, okay, X-rays, there are a lot of diagnostic centers, X-rays are easy to do. So an AI model was built where they looked at X-ray, a normal lung, a lung which has, say, pneumonia, versus a COVID lung. And they were able to distinguish using those X-rays alone, if is at least a certain level of, this one is 80% COVID positive, and then you do the COVID test because they were also expensive initially. So that was done by a group of doctors and technologists based out of here, and it has been used by one of the hospitals extensively in the phase 1 of COVID. Those collaborations will happen, and we have seen many such things happening in COVID times.
Sure. Anyone else? Any other questions?
In fact, I'll take this one.
Yeah.
I was working with a client a couple of months back, and they were kind of in same space. Can't name the client for obvious purpose, but same problem. So they learned that this problem of data not being available can only be solved by further collection of data. So once this problem comes at scale, the number one thing that we need to do is we know that we cannot handle these many cases. Everybody is having fever. Everybody is having cough and cold. So they need to create certain tiers that, okay, it's green, amber, and red. So what they started doing that they made a collection of devices. A patient has to go through those tests. For example, it's a lung test. And those devices are easily available under $10, and you take it, and then you check your fever. You enter all those inputs from your own devices, and when you put it in the system, it will tell you that whether you are into red zone or not. And then they learned that red zone is only 12 or 14%. So now the bigger problem that you had can be fairly better handled than, you are having 100,000 patients at your doorstep. So it's like more and more we learn about these problems, more and more data we collect, and then only we can create these models. So yeah, we need to live with time, as Vijoy said, that it's a once in a lifetime kind of situation that we had to go through. And again, we can talk about it because we have gone past that at least. But it was never easy for them. They were kind of, the situation was getting out of their hands.
Yeah. I have a question here.
Yeah, sure, please. Last question. Yeah, thank you.
Okay, the question is on the data culture. One of the panelists say the importance of, everybody coming on board and, playing their part so that, it helps to, have a better product and service delivery. So in a large organization, I'm working for a company called Merck. So what are some of the challenges you foresee when you are fostering a data culture? Because it is not everybody's cup of tea, right? So how do you, again, it's a long-term evolution. It has its own time. So how do you foster data culture within the organization, and what are the challenges you foresee and how do you overcome it? Thank you.
So if you'd ask me, I would say that today, in India at least, the first step which data engineers actually spend time on is the quality, cleaning that data up, sir. After I've cleaned that data up, the second thing I'm doing is bringing it all together, getting a single view. And I would say only 10% time is actually on model development. And that also, unfortunately, the problem is that none of those models or majority of those models never go to production. So largely we are doing, that's why if you're a smaller business, I would say that use small data, analyze it, because that is much more manageable is what my suggestion would be.
Right. So I think from a data culture standpoint, right, like it has to be top-down driven, right? And the CEO has to take the decision on if we focus, and I think one of the gentlemen on the panel said that if you focus of data as an asset and not as an exhaust, right, like then there is an ROI to data and we treat data very, religiously, then they kind of make the right investments, right? And at least in my organization, we have a chief data officer. Many organizations do have them. And the focus should be on cataloging data, making sure like you classify the data properly, making sure like you have the right user access controls, right? Making sure you have data stewards in each of the business units that you can nominate and bring them together. And each of these data stewards have to be the spokesperson for data or for their particular organization, and they have to be accountable for all the privacy, regulatory and other requirements that corporate has of the function, right? So once you have a shared accountability model, right, where you have some controls with a function like a CDO, right, and where they establish these kind of process and controls, then you have to sort of put in that effort to start building this culture. And the ROI is once you establish a data marketplace for yourself within the organization, which is if I'm in marketing and I'm building a customer churn prediction model and I need data from finance, now it is not dependent on my personal relationships with finance to provide the data to me, right? If I can see that in a marketplace, just like I go to Google Play Store and download an app that I want, if I can kind of get the data set that I'm interested in because it's cataloged, it's classified, etc., and I can see it and I can feel it and I know I have the right access levels to pick this data, then I can build the model or spend more time building the model than hunting for the data and then cleaning the data, right? So that has to be top-down driven, and that's a journey, and it takes 4-5 years to get there.
Yeah, no, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Very good way to answer and very good way to end the session also. Thank you very much for all of your views and time. I think it was a lovely and enriching discussion. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, panelists and Mr. Sethi.